Welcome to Polar Bears International latest live chat. I'm Elisa McCall with PBI, and we have a very special guest that I know you've all been looking forward to talking to all day long.
Don't look at me like that. Hi.
Hi, Hayley. We're so happy to have Hayley. Hayley, some of them might not know who you are. Can you introduce yourself?
My name's Hayley Shephard, and right now I'm at the Tundra Buggy Lodge working for Frontiers North. However, back in the summer in Churchill, I was the Beluga boat captain. So this is my other hat that I'm wearing, and it's great to combine those two worlds together. Woohoo!
Yeah, so exciting.
Yeah, we were able to. I'm BJ Kershaw with Polar Bears International, and of course we all met Hayley first out here on the Tundra Buggy Lodge, and we managed to scoop her up for the Beluga Cam, and what a great experience for all of us.
Yeah, it's neat. You've been here for a number of years as well. This is I think it's my 12th year working for Frontiers North as a guide. This is a little unusual though, like we're sitting here having a live chat. Normally when I'm speaking to the Explore family, I'm driving a Zodiac. This is very formal. We have big bright lights looking at us. We've got a microphone here.
Are you sure you don't want to wear the headset, Hayley, for old time's sake?
Oh, let me just touch it.
Yeah.
Actually, I should just put it on and take it off.
The people might be able to recognize you.
Yeah, maybe if I turn sideways and I just I control
like you're running a boat.
Yeah, or maybe I should
like kind of be doing this for you if you
okay.
want. Yeah.
Well, I could hold the camera and then I could steer. I could just as though I'm steering the tiller with my foot like I used to do. And then I'll be right at home. No, this is good. It's cozy, it's warm, and it's blowing outside. So I'm happy to be inside this Buggy One studio.
Mm-hmm. Even with the light shining right on your face.
Yeah.
Your poor eyeballs. I know. Yeah.
Showing my pale complexion from the polar winter that we're approaching.
I think you're doing just fine. Can you tell us a bit about the day you had today? So what's an average day like out here compared to what it was in the beluga season?
Well, there's not a beluga to be seen anywhere, and I'm looking through my binoculars. No, I've had to switch from enjoying the belugas and teaching guests about belugas to polar bears. So a typical day for me, I'm out on the Tundra Buggy, so that all-terrain vehicle that travels on the trails, looking for polar bear, for ptarmigan, Arctic fox, Arctic hare, and I usually have about 21 guests in my care, and would literally just binoculars glued, looking for wildlife and educating my guests about the terrain and the Hudson Bay and the ice and everything about the environment out here. So that's my job. I usually pick up a group in Winnipeg. I'm with them for 4 days. We fly to Churchill. We have an adventure for 4 days, including 2 days on the tundra, and then we go back to Winnipeg, and I do that back and forth until about the middle of November. So it's about a 7-week season for me, or 2 months at the most.
Very exciting. The big temperature difference though, I guess, or how are you finding it?
Yes, it's cold. Actually, some of the times I'm wearing the same layers as I was wearing on the river because of that brisk northwest wind that comes from the Hudson Bay. But it's bitter cold when the wind is blowing like it is now. I'm not sure if you can get that feeling, or maybe...
Actually, I'm feeling a breeze on my neck, which isn't that normal in here. Usually we're pretty isolated, but I think it's just so windy out there right now. That's kind of nice. We got our parkas on, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, we're inside you're wearing parkas.
Yeah.
You should check out BJ's boots.
Oh,
these are the polar boots. Have you ever seen these? It's like a beluga. That's the closest thing to a beluga. Big white thing.
We should beluga noggin right there.
Oh, you've got a melon right here.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Great.
You'll have to call me your beluga boots.
My
beluga boots.
Perfect.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, the floor is pretty cold in Buggy One, and the ceiling is pretty hot. The temperature gradient in here is extreme, so you gotta have something good on your toes.
Yeah, and I'm usually okay because I'm short, but the tall guys, they have quite a difference when they stand up, and it's hot up here and cold down here. I just kind of stay down here, but their heads get pretty high.
It's a completely different world in Churchill in the fall going on to winter. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we already have lots of questions rolling in.
Cool.
So, question number 1, Hayley. Do you see any belugas out on the bay while you're driving the Tundra Buggy around? So you kind of mentioned that already. Have you seen Patrick? And if so, how is he doing? I can actually answer that too.
Okay, well I'll answer the first question. Usually over the years, the first maybe 7 or 8 years of coming to Churchill for polar bear season, which is about the middle of October, we never used to see belugas in the Churchill. We didn't see them in the river at that time or in the Hudson Bay, just offshore. But the last 4 or so years, we have been seeing polar bear season belugas. But the last beluga I saw was October the 22nd, and that's the last sighting that I had of a beluga. Patrick, I haven't seen him since our last day on the water. So yes, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm actually friends with Patrick and his new wife. Patrick just got married a couple weeks ago over the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend. And I couldn't go, unfortunately, while I was up here. But apparently it was very beautiful and they had a wonderful time, and they are currently in Ontario. So we will definitely let you know that, we'll let Patrick know that people are thinking of him.
That's
so,
great.
Yeah, so thanks for that.
Congratulations to Patrick. Perhaps he's even
Definitely.
tuned in.
That would be cool. Hi, Pat, if you're watching. Okay, question number 2, Hayley. Have you ever seen a polar bear try to kill a whale? And if so, who did you root for?
Oh, jeez. Oh, that's a really interesting question. I have not at all seen that kind of a kill. I have, though, seen other whales killing other animals. So, for example, I've seen a transient killer whale attack a minke whale, so a small baleen whale. It's tough because I love orca, but I love minke, and they both need food to eat. So it took me a while to, although being a naturalist and understanding that it's survival of the fittest and little is eaten by big, whatever the food chain is, it took me a while to kind of be able to witness and not enjoy, but really, it's kind of a profound experience seeing that kind of a hunt go on. But I certainly wasn't rooting for either. I was just, let nature be, and whatever happens, and yeah, it's kind of hard to watch. But polar bear and beluga, that would be a tough one because the polar bears need to eat. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Yeah.
On the coast this summer, we fly down the coast of Wapusk National Park to see what the polar bears are doing in August, and we did see 2 polar bears sharing a beluga that had probably washed up on shore. We're not really sure. We didn't see the actual hunt, but they were definitely enjoying their meal. And I've also seen, not the act itself, but when orca whales come into Hudson Bay, which has been happening occasionally lately, we saw thousands of belugas actually packed a little north of Churchill into the Seal River, which is quite shallow, to get away from the orcas. And a polar bear was advantage. We were flying over in a helicopter and saw this polar bear basically sitting his bum down, or surrounded by belugas, just waiting for his chance, and he ended up getting a calf. It was pretty amazing, just a sea of this river to escape the orcas. Kind of, you feel bad for the calf, but it was a pretty happy polar bear. So
yeah, we actually quite a few days ago we did have a bearded seal, so much larger than the rings, haul up on. I think it was either it hauled up on a high tide and then the tide went out, and of course there's kilometre intertidal zone when the tide's low, and that bearded seal got stranded, and a number of bears utilized that free feed. And there was actually a skinnier bear that we recognized getting in on the feast, and so I did feel some kind of relief that bear was getting something before. They're still waiting for the ice to form on the Hudson Bay for them to hunt seal. So I did feel sort of relief there, knowing that one animal was feeding a few. And it's exciting for guests that have traveled all over the world to see polar bears, but instead they get polar bears in a feasting situation, which is dramatic and neat.
Yeah, and the bearded seal out here would be pretty rare to see polar bears get, so that would be pretty
bearded
special.
seal is very seen. Ring and harbor seal be caught by polar bears when the ice wasn't formed yet. So yeah, bearded seal. That's a good feast.
Yeah, they're like 800 pounds.
800 pounds. They're
Do you recognize any of the bears out here? If you're out here so often, do you kind of pick a few out and kind of know who they are that you've seen them?
Yeah, we've got a couple of polar bears are hard to identify as individuals. The easier ones to identify are the males that have been in scraps, and whether that's sparring or whether it's fighting comes springtime when they're fighting over a mate or fighting over food even. So there's some bears, and particularly the males, have good scars below their eyes, on their snout, sometimes on their neck. So there's some bears that we've seen. There's one that you've probably spoken about called Victor, and we call him Victor because he has you did? Yeah. He has a dark scar below his eye, and it's in the shape of a V. We've got, because their skin is black, and if they lose any kind of their hair, then that black stands out, so these scars stand out. So there's a couple that we recognize, but otherwise it's pretty tricky with polar bears.
There's another one that the lodge staff have coined Sammy.
Sammy,
Sammy
yes.
has a big mark over his
Over
left
his
eye.
eye, that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah, so that's another one that
And
the lodge staff have named.
Just today we saw a bear that had right between his or her eyes just a little fine line. So that's something we'll keep in the back of our heads and recognize again, perhaps. Yeah.
Very interesting. So maybe a switch for a moment.
Mhm.
When you're back home, do you lead tours for orca watching?
Yes, I have done. It depends what year it is. Some of the guiding that I've done back home, so this is in British Columbia, northern Vancouver Island area. I have done a little bit of sea kayak guiding, so that's where we take kayaks filled with gear for a week, food and a tent and sleeping bag, and we do trips camping along the coast while we kayak from island to island, and we're with it's very popular because it's in an area where there's killer whales. So that's one of the jobs that I have done. Most recently, though, I was working at a lodge where I would do marine tours. So spending a whole day looking for humpback whales and orca, and just showing the folks again from all over the world my backyard, which is one of my favorite places to guide.
Oh, that sounds
It's a
really
beautiful
amazing.
spot.
Yeah.
Probably a little warmer than here, huh?
Just a tad warmer. We had a great summer this year, although most of my summer was in Churchill. But we had a really good summer and quite an interesting, going back to BC after the beluga boat season. I was speaking to my friends, whom some of you know from Orca Lab, Paul Spong and Helena Simons. And it was really interesting, what happened in the summer. There was a lot of transient encounters, even more so than resident. So resident killer whales feeding on salmon, transient whales feeding on other marine mammals. So there was lots of transient activity, which was it stood out for all those that have spent many years whale watching and running trips. So I was excited to hear that in some ways. Sad that I missed it, but I can't be in two places at once, but I sure would love to have them both happening, orca and beluga. Yeah.
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that sounds so nice. Well, we have more questions coming in. It's kind of an interesting question. How does driving a Tundra Buggy compare to searching for belugas? Is it more challenging to find the bears?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question. It's funny because last night when I was with my group coming to the lodge, somebody said to me, "Is this how fast the Tundra Buggy goes?" It goes slowly because we're on very rough terrain and we have to go slow, otherwise our passengers would be falling on the floor and we'd probably damage the vehicle and damage the terrain. So we kind of have to go pretty carefully and slowly. And the way that I described it to her, and I said, well, we've got to go slow because the slower we go, the more we're going to see. Because we might see a Arctic fox curled up beneath the willows and we might miss it going fast. And I gave her another analogy about it, and that's whale watching. You could be speeding in a speedboat and you're not going to see any whales because you're going too fast. You've got to slow down to then be there to see the blow. One thing with polar bears, though, you don't see them just when they surface to breathe like you do with whales. So I think it's a little bit easier in a sense of watching a single bear for a long period of time. but there are definitely more belugas around in the Churchill River than there are polar bears out here. And sometimes the cream of the polar bear matches the cream of the boulders that are around the terrain out here. I love it when the snow has fallen, because then a polar bear, which is cream, stands out against the white. So this time of year it's much easier spotting polar bear.
That's true. Earlier in the year, there's a lot of bear rocks, we call them.
Oh, yeah.
Rocks that look
Yeah.
like bears from a
They're
distance.
almost the exact same color as the limestone rocks that are out here. And so,
It's
I mean,
really amazing.
inevitably someone on the buggy will say, hey, look, there's a bear over there. And it's a rock.
Yeah.
And they'll do that over and over and over again.
Over.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
drivers and the guides do it over again.
Yeah.
I really, there's times that I feel like I want to paint the rocks red,
Yeah.
put a cross on it.
Or just paint a little eye on it, and really get them.
Yeah, you'd probably
Yeah.
park and have people taking pictures of it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few rocks out here that are kind of interesting. There's one that looks like a hare, an Arctic hare
Yeah.
on the way out, and that used to get me all the time. And there's a couple other spots that could be a hare, it could be a fox.
Jack
could be something.
spotted one last week that looked like a seal.
Yeah.
That one out there? Yeah,
Yeah.
looked like a seal sitting there.
So
Pretty cool.
a lot of wildlife out there that doesn't move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw, just to finish on that topic, I did see what was a perfect polar boulder.
I really like that.
And it was really unusual because there was willows and this polar boulder, which could have been, some people were thinking, a butt of a bear, polar bear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very unusual for a bear to have his head or her head pointing into the willows and the butt facing the open. Usually the butt is towards the willows, which is a small shrub, and the head of the polar bear is out to see incoming potential dangers. So I was certain it was a rock, but my Tundra Buggy driver said, there's not usually a cream rock there, Hales. And of course it ended up being a bear, but I've never seen a bear with its head.
Oh, funny.
Is that the one right here on Buggy Lake?
Yes.
Just buried in that bush.
Buried, like
Yeah.
his head was buried, and normally they
It
need
was
to
weird.
see incoming other bears in case they're in some danger. So
Was
that
it a
was-
young bear?
it was a young bear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just figuring out.
Maybe it was
the-
just like,
Yeah.
I'm tired I just want to be on my own.
Aw. That's pretty funny. We'll have to keep
Mm.
an eye out for him in the willows.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
I sure wouldn't want to go walking through any of these willows.
No,
'cause
you
I'm
couldn't
sure
pee
we're
me
only
enough.
seeing, a fraction of the bears out here. It's
Yeah.
amazing how
Yeah.
well, if they don't really want to be seen, they
Yeah.
will not be.
Yeah, they can hide amazingly well considering they're a huge white animal.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, how many times have we just even parked for a while to watch another bear, not realizing that one's
Mhm.
right next to us and it
Yep.
pops out? And, oh my gosh, yeah, would
Yeah.
not want to be on the ground at this time of year.
No.
And they're so silent. They
Mhm.
move.
Mm-hmm.
Another difference with the belugas, you've got a giveaway because of the breath. Whereas polar bears, they move around, they come even so close to you, and you don't even hear a sound. Sometimes
even
you
a little
hear, sometimes the crunch of the snow under their
Mhm.
paw, but otherwise they're silent. Even when they're sparring, when they're testing their strength against another bear in this interesting social gathering that happens here at this time of year. But quiet animals.
Interesting. All right. Do you know much about how many bears have been spotted near town while waiting for the ice?
That's a good question.
That's a very good question, and I know that town has been bears in the polar bear holding facility. I know cracker shots have been heard at nighttime quite regularly, so a lot of activity actually.
And I think started fairly early too.
And it started early. It started
to
while
late-
we were still
Yeah,
on the water with the belugas.
yeah. 'Cause
Yeah.
I talked to some of the resource officers there, and they said
Mhm.
they're pretty tired. They've been going pretty strong
That's what I
since
heard
late
too.
summer, and they're not done yet. They probably have another couple weeks of chasing bears around before everybody heads out on the ice.
And I know at least 2 friends that have had bears in their backyard, which is kind of exciting and neat in one sense. So it's been busy. I don't know a number of sightings around town, but just definitely a busy season. Yeah.
Right. We'll see how it plays out.
Mm-hmm.
How was your garden when you got home from your beluga
That's a good
adventures?
Oh, that's great. My garden, yes. Wow, I've never seen anything like it. So we had, in BC, we had a really warm summer. Very, very dry, lots of sunshine, very little rain. And I planted a veggie garden, as you know, and I've never seen the weeds like they were. I was growing things I didn't even know I was growing. My kale ended up being like taller than me.
Wow.
And also thistles. I've never had thistles, and I had thistles that were even taller than me.
Wow.
It was a jungle, and in amongst the jungle though were beets or beetroot that were bigger than a baseball, bigger than a baseball. They were huge and delicious and juicy. So
Yum.
my garden did really well, but wow, the weeds were incredible.
Oh, jeez.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And my brand new, before I came out to run the beluga boat, I built a yellow cedar fence. And it's yellow cedar is exactly how it sounds. It's yellow, beautiful scent to it. And it was just about going grey already. And usually it takes a couple of years for cedar to go that silver grey. And already it was showing signs of it because of the sun that was just scorching on the new fence. It looks really nice grey, so I didn't bother putting anything on it. But garden it was a lot of work. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Got my hands nice and dirty, soil in the fingernails. It's all good.
Oh, good. Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Is there a certain time to see polar bear sows with cubs, or will they come after the earlier bears go out on the ice? And are polar bear cubs in as much danger as brown bear cubs?
Okay, so the first part of that question is what we tend to see at this time of year is a lot of movement with different ages of bears. So there's the beginning of the season, the polar bear season, we were starting to see more subadults, so younger bears. And during that time, you may get to see a family group, so a mum and a cub, whether it's a first year cub or a second year cub. And then what happens if big male polar bears show up, it seems to flush out those family groups, particularly because being a good polar bear mum, you want to protect your cub. So they just get the heck out of town if there's a big bear showing up. So what we're seeing now is quite a number of adult males around and fewer subadults, and I haven't seen a family group for at least a week and a half. So we see a little bit of everything, but not all at once. And if we do, things certainly will shift and move because of the bears that are protecting a younger cub.
We kind of caught the tail end of a mom and cub yesterday
Oh,
at the
yeah.
end of the
They
day.
were moving through.
But they were moving through fast. They didn't waste any time. They
Mhm.
pushed through the whole group here and headed towards town there. So
What we
there hasn't been that many
Yeah,
family groups.
I think I've seen two, and again, it was all in one day, and they didn't last because big males were coming through.
Yeah.
One thing we do experience at the very, very tail end of the season, so the ice is already formed out here at Polar Bear Point, and the Tundra Buggy Lodge gets broken up and towed individually out to Cape. Cape's what, 15 kilometres from here?
Yeah, maybe even more.
Okay, so maybe 20 kilometres from here out towards the east. We set up the lodge there, and then we're kind of there to watch the last of the bears leave the area to go out onto the ice. So when the 4 or 5 years that I've done that, we always see the subadults. I can't remember the order between subadults and adults, but it's always the adults coming and heading out to the ice, then the subadults, and finally the last bears we tend to see leaving inland to go out on the ice as the mums and cubs. So it's kind of like they're staying out of the way till they know for sure that all the other bears are going to be gone already. So they've got a safe passage, because at that time of year, bears are hungry and they're ready for food, and a cub could be an easy kill. So it's pretty smart of a mum to stay back and wait till all of the dangers have gone out on the ice first.
That's how we generally know the season is almost over, is when you start to see a lot of moms and cubs.
Yes.
It's kind of the grand finale for the polar bear season here.
Yep.
And it's about time to start thinking about making plans to head south.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah, for us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're making plans to go out on the ice.
They're going out on the
Eat
ice.
seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in our satellite data too. We can see that a lot of the mums and cubs are still well inland, just a couple near the coast, and we see them moving towards the coast. Usually when we already know there's adult males leaving or on the coast, the ice comes in, and then more mums and cubs will leave. So
Yeah.
it seems to be a pattern. And there was a cub killed by a male last week here, closer to town near the Ithaca.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because
Yeah.
I saw a female, and at first I thought could be a male because it was a good sized bear, polar bear, of course. And I looked through my binoculars to see if I could sex the bear, and I noticed the urine stained guard here right behind the tail, just below the tail. So that's good indication it's a female. Definitely was a female because she then lay on her back and she made it obvious with her lovely paws open wide, we could see. And she was in really good shape, and she was definitely old enough to have cubs.
Oh, interesting.
And she was without cubs. So
Right.
my guess was actually that she had cubs and lost the one or even the two, because she definitely had a good enough weight in order to see a pregnancy to full term if she was pregnant. So that was interesting observation.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
we do see bears out here that have been sighted in town or vice versa. So they certainly move around fairly easily, of course, and quite quickly, but steadily. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
slow and steady
Mhm.
wins the polar bear race, I
Yeah,
guess.
they
or-
cover a lot of ground
No
Mhm.
kidding.
quite quickly.
Haley, have you ever seen a spirit bear?
Yes, I
Wow.
have. Yeah.
Cool.
So for those that don't know what a spirit bear is, it is a black bear, but it is a black bear with a recessive gene, so it doesn't appear black, it appears cream. Quite similar to the color of polar bear, but they're land-based, so they're a little bit kind of like a grubby polar bear. And I've seen them in the Great Bear Rainforest, so north of Vancouver Island. I was working on a sailboat and did trips up in that area, and we go into this area where we go to viewing stands that overlook a river, and we wait there quietly, and every now and again a black bear will come by, and then every now and again a white black bear, a spirit bear, will come by and fish right below us. So I've had a couple of encounters with a spirit bear. It's weird. It's white in a green forest.
Wow.
So strange.
So neat.
But they look just like a black bear, everything else. And of course they can have black cubs. So it can be quite a neat family group when you see that coloration.
Oh, that's so neat.
Yeah.
What is the weirdest thing you've ever seen a polar bear do?
Oh, that's a really good question. What is the weirdest thing I have ever seen a polar bear do? Well, they are for the largest walking carnivore on this planet, it's amazing how playful and cute and just very playful that they can be. So I've seen a polar bear on its back with this twig from a willow. And it was as though it was trying to put the twig between its toes. And it was the way that it was moving, it seemed exactly like you'd see the gorillas or monkeys do, you know?
Yeah.
Really,
That's pretty wild.
and it's
That's
not,
super cute.
it's nothing outrageous, but it was just so darn cute that you feel like it was your dog back home, that you could step down on the tundra and give it a belly rub. It was just so playful and so innocent. So I've seen that, but what about you guys?
Oh, I was gonna ask BJ. Yeah.
You know, a few years ago we were out in one of the tundra ponds here before things really froze up, and parked the buggy in Buggy Lake out there, and a muskrat came swimming by. And it's a little thing, if you haven't seen a muskrat, it's a little critter about like this, and they swim around almost like a beaver, but they're all shrunk down. And the polar bear went after this little muskrat. And it was chasing
Wow.
around, trying to get it in the water. Now the chase wasn't long.
Funny.
The muskrat ended up getting away, swam underneath the Tundra Buggy, and took off. But I thought, how neat. You know, this
Man.
polar
And-
bear thought, oh, maybe there's something to eat there, and took off after him.
That's super cool.
I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone's, of course, have seen the footage or the photos actually of the husky
Mhm.
Canadian Eskimo dog playing with a polar bear. That did become quite famous as it went on the internet.
Yeah.
So that's again just a relationship between two very, very different species. And of course, with YouTube, there's all sorts of
Yes.
those videos that we can now view of
Mhm.
an owl befriending a cat, and an elephant befriending a dog, and a polar bear befriending a dog. So very interesting. But that muskrat, I wonder if it wanted to play
Yeah, I don't know.
rather than
Yeah.
I want to
Just
eat it.
Who knows?
Do you know what we saw today? And it was one of the most exciting events for me today. I thought it was a lemming at first, but then with a few ID photos, we saw a vole.
No way.
But it was a vole, so
Cool.
yeah, just a kind of a mouse-sized little critter out in the snow amongst the willows, but staying on the surface, and you could just see it pecking at the willows, eating
That's
the willows.
Really neat.
Neat.
And at first, I thought it was a lemming, which is really exciting too, because there's so many species that rely on lemmings, and you
Mhm.
never see them, you just know of them, because they burrow under the ground. But there was a vole. We figured it was a vole because of the length of the tail, and it wasn't such a stocky
Mhm.
like the lemming can be.
Neat.
So
That's
that
how
was-
I started my wildlife research career. Was voles.
Really?
Yep. I studied them for a couple
Wow.
years. They're pretty bitey, but I
They're
sure like
bitey.
them. They're a little
No,
bitey.
they're little
when you have to
nibble,
handle
nibble.
them and tag them,
Mm.
yeah. But they're pretty darn cute.
More bitey or less bitey than a polar bear?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's
Well,
a
I've never
different
been
bitey.
bit by a polar bear,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's hard to say. Like,
I'm gonna make a guess that probably the polar bear's a little bit more bite.
Probably.
Yeah.
We take
You'd
more
notice it.
precautions with polar bears than with voles. So.
Yeah.
But you've moved from from voles to polar bears.
That's a
That's
good
quite
jump.
That's
Yeah.
quite the
Yeah.
There were
jump.
some toads in the middle there, but yeah.
Aw.
Big jump.
Great.
Oh, pretty fun.
Good old toads.
Yeah. What was your closest encounter with a polar bear?
Well, this takes me back to my very first year, where I was exposed to Churchill as a beautiful community. Tundra Buggy, great vehicle to head out on this sort of rough terrain. And then my first encounter with a polar bear was very memorable. But that very first season, I saw the largest bear that I thought I could ever encounter. And this bear was so tall that when it went on its back legs and put its paws on the side of the buggy, its snout could reach the window quite high up.
That's a big
And
one.
Yeah.
I was sitting in a seat right next to a window, and this bear did exactly this, and it pressed its nose against the window, and without me thinking, and I was just drawn to it, it was the child, my inner child, I just pressed my nose against the same window, so we were nose to nose with a little tiny
Cool.
pane of glass separating us. So that was my closest that I
Wow.
ever
Very
came to a
neat.
polar bear. I don't think you could get much closer.
That bear must have been huge.
It was big. That was Dancer.
Well, he was a big bear.
Dancer was a bear that we knew very well due to his scars and his regular visits and spending time here waiting for the ice to freeze. So he was a bear that we all got to know.
Mhm.
And I think the last we saw was like 2 years ago maybe.
2 or 3
And he
years,
was
yeah.
very, very skinny, so basically on his last leg. So, but I saw him for 10 years in a row, just about, maybe 9.
He would show up here at the lodge within a 2 or 3 day period every single year.
Mhm.
I mean, it was amazing. It's almost like he set his reminder. He'd be like, oh, I'm going to be at the Tundra Buggy Lodge November 1st.
Mhm.
And he was
That's
always here.
amazing.
It was incredible.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was in a Tundra Buggy talking about Dancer, telling my group about that close encounter, and I was just talking about this bear that we've become to know, and we called him Dancer because he would go on his hind legs, and instead of straight away placing his hands on the buggy, he would keep them away but need to balance, so he would sort of do the step in order to keep balanced. So we call him Dancer. But there was a time I was telling my group, sitting in the buggy out overlooking towards the east, and little did I know a guest had been watching this bear approach very steadily but very quickly. And as it got quite close, the lady said, "Just so you know, Hayley, there's a bear approaching." And I put my binoculars up to my eyes and I recognized the scars.
No way.
And it was Dancer. I had just been telling everybody about Dancer. And he came straight up to the buggy.
Oh, that's neat.
There, I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
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 Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was sad to see him skinny, but it's just part of the cycle of a polar bear. Yeah.
And so we had another question wondering if the same bears return every year. And some definitely do and some don't.
Mhm.
Kind of see a mix.
Yeah, we do.
Both. Yeah.
It's
Depends.
it's neat to see the ones that you recognize, and those scars really, really help.
Yeah,
Mhm.
he's a pretty famous bear around here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice guy. So this is kind of maybe tough because I know it depends. But on any given day, what would be the average number of different bears you might see during an excursion?
It depends on what time of the season. So the season generally begins around the 12th of October. I got to Churchill on the 13th of October. And at that time we were seeing 2 to 5 individual bears. And that would fluctuate over the next week or two leading up to Halloween, which we just had. One day we had 15, another day we had 22. So again, it all depends on the movements of the bears and what bears are in the area. And again, sometimes we don't know, are we seeing a brand new bear, or is this bear the one we were seeing sleeping over there that's just walked across the lake, the frozen lake, and is now walking elsewhere. So again, I think the most I've ever seen, probably about 25 to 27 individual different
Wow.
bears.
It's a big day.
That's on a
Yeah.
that's a really good day, and a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
at the time where the ice is just about ready to form. And then at that time, when the ice starts to form along the edge, you do see bears stepping out and just waiting right on the fringes, ready to hunt seal.
Yeah, they must get so excited. How
Mhm.
many? What's your biggest bear day out here? Do you know?
You know, I haven't really ever kept track. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's about the same as Hayley
Yeah.
there,
Mhm.
probably. But yeah, I think we're so consumed with so many of the things we're doing out here, trying to make sure the
Mhm.
cameras are working and all that kind of stuff. I lose count. Of course,
Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes it's not the amount either, it's the quality of bears. There's
Totally.
times that
Right.
we've stayed with 2 bears and there's been bears in the distance and we haven't bothered to visit them because we've got 2 bears that are interacting with each other and they're
Mhm.
play fighting. And when I say play fighting, what I'm talking about is 2 females that were
That's
Oh.
pretty unusual.
not
Yeah.
sparring, because that
Cool.
seems a bit more vigorous and more seen with males, but they were kind of pillow fighting bears. They were just rolling around each other, and then they would just sleep side by side, and then there was just so much activity that we stuck with those bears just about the whole day. So
It was kind of our day to day.
Mm.
We saw a couple bears sparring out there on the lake
Mhm.
near First Tower, and we decided we'd just kind of hang out with those bears today, just because. And it paid off because towards the end of the day there, we got to catch them sparring again out there in the middle of the lake, and that was totally
Wow.
worth it because you get a
Wow.
couple of bears sparring on the ice out there. It's
And it was super
spectacular.
cool because they kept kind of slipping while they were sparring because they were
Mm.
doing it on the ice, and it
Oh,
was hilarious. And
neat.
they were having
Yeah.
a good time.
Yeah.
this is the one that had a lot of
yeah, you
Yeah.
had some blood on it.
Blood.
He had a bit of
Yeah.
blood, but he kept going. He was not bothered.
they've got sharp
Man.
claws and sharp teeth,
Yeah.
and even if they're only sparring and not fighting seriously for a food or for a mate because it's out of season for that, they still can cause little nicks and blood.
Mhm.
So this one, we stayed for a while and we waited. We didn't wait all day though. I guess we're getting restless. But we were hoping for them to get back up. After sparring, they get very overheated, really. Just imagine putting on your warmest clothes, your warmest layers, and then play fighting with your brother or your sister, or sprinting down the road, doing a mile. With all of those layers, you'd want to cool down. So that's what we were seeing when we arrived on that same scene, as the bears just sprawled out on the snow, trying to cool themselves down.
Sometimes you'll see them eating the snow.
Eating the snow. Yeah, all the groin area are just flat, trying to get the snow in those areas.
Funny.
Yeah.
Oh, they are pretty neat. Where do you go after the polar bear season ends? What's next?
Wow, where do I go? That's a good question. I haven't made plans, but it's December, and what I did when last polar bear season finished, I went to Tofino on the west coast, and I rented a cabin for 3 weeks, and I surfed as many days as I could. That's when the swell hits the west coast of Vancouver Island, so it's great surfing. I've got to wear my thick wetsuit though, and then I head off to the Antarctic to work. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for this December. I might have to go home and work in the garden again, but I will be heading to Antarctica January 10th to work on a ship as expedition leader. So again, being a guide, a lot of people in my care working alongside a captain who takes the ship to beautiful places where we can cruise with icebergs and look for whales and hang out with penguins on shore. So that's the next job that I have.
Pretty cool.
And that's until about the 20th of March.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Well, maybe you'll have to give the Explorer community an update while you're down there. Just pop into a
Yeah.
chat window or
Oh
something.
my
I'm
gosh.
sure everyone will be excited to know what you're doing.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Cool.
Gosh, that'd be really combining all my worlds
No
to
kidding.
one.
Yeah.
Woo!
Woo. And maybe in that note, do you have a page on any social media sites that people can follow?
I used to be very good at keeping a blog. I used to have a blog, and I would do lots of articles and post photographs and even video clips. And then I got a little bit busy, and that sort of slipped away. I feel like I'm being encouraged to do so just from myself and from that question. So yes, I do. But I've got to get it up and running again.
Sounds good. We'll help promote it.
Yeah, there we
just
go.
Let us know.
For
Yeah,
sure. That's
exciting.
now that I've got this new family, it's definitely an inspiration. I'd love to share with everybody what I'm up to in different times of the year and what animals that I'm spending time with and trying to protect and educating people about, and it's so many different worlds that I work in, which I'm very lucky.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be great. It'd be an honor to share it with everybody for
Oh,
sure.
That's really nice.
Mhm.
I know, maybe I'll just share with you guys that we were actually talking on the buggy yesterday or today about how great the Explorer community is and how supportive they are.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but you know, when you talk about polar bears and climate change, you definitely get some pushback, and sometimes it can get a little nasty. But this Explorer community is just so lovely, and Andy DeRoche actually said that he wishes he could give you all a hug. He said that to us, and he is not a huggy
He's
guy.
not a hugger.
He does not hug. I've had one hug from him in over 5 years, so there you
Wow,
go.
that is
Yeah. Isn't
that
nice?
is a compliment, and
Yes,
I
it is.
certainly felt that on the Beluga boat. It was actually, and I talked about this on my last day on the river with everybody, that it was an unexpected highlight of my summer, was the interest and the passion and the appreciation. So I'm sure it goes from the belugas to the bears to whatever other live cam that you're observing, but you just really appreciate it. You get it, and that's I'm grateful for that, because
Yeah,
it means
for
you're an ambassador for this beautiful natural earth that we want to protect.
Totally. Yeah, we were pretty lucky to be mixed up in this Explorer crowd. So
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
yeah. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and to have a live chat out here, it's great. I was so excited. Yeah, really, really neat to be back.
I have no idea what this question means, so you're gonna have to explain it. It says, "Woohoo, Hayley! Have you taught anyone the Tim Tam slam recently?" What?
Do you know, I should have brought some to the lodge. Have you heard of the Tim Tam Slam?
I don't think
You
so,
haven't?
no.
So in New Zealand and Australia, we have what you would call a cookie, that we call a biscuit, and it is like kind of a layered biscuit, chocolate icing that's hard, biscuit, chocolate icing, covered in chocolate, kind of like a wafer.
Sounds delicious.
And what you do is you have a hot mug of hot chocolate, and you bite a little corner off one of the ends, and then you bite a corner off the opposite end. You dip it just ever so slightly into the hot chocolate, and then you suck it up like you're sucking like a straw. And the hot chocolate oozes into the biscuit, and then you throw it in your mouth, and it just completely collapses and melts, and it's
Wow.
just so delicious.
Sounds amazing.
We should definitely make those out
We
here.
need some Tim Tams.
Okay, you know
Yeah.
what? The next time I'm at the lodge, I'm going to bring some Tim Tams, and we're going to do Tim Tam slams. Yes, Rob and I did it. Rob brought some Rob, the cello player, brought some Tim Tams, and we did it on the Beluga boat.
That's
Too
hilarious.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
really
Good
funny.
memory. Good memory.
So we just have a couple more questions before we'll do our wrap up. Do the bears have a way to test the ice to know that it's frozen hard enough?
Yes, they do, and it's so neat to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, when you think about the thickness of ice that the bears need, believe it or not, we need thicker ice. Our weight is not as distributed as a polar bear's on their 4 paws. So when they're walking on the ice, sometimes you just see them meandering, and then sometimes you see them where they're walking with their legs spread, their front paws spread, and their back legs spread, and they're basically widening their stance on all fours to spread their weight even further. And that's them testing the ice. And I've seen them test the ice and collapse through and have to swim back out or back up because, oh, it's too thin. So they change their mind and go elsewhere. So yeah, they definitely have that way of testing the ice.
And we like to call that the polar bear starfish.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's pretty darn cute.
Yeah.
Do you regularly see other animals such as the Arctic fox or the Arctic hare?
It does vary with other animal sightings. The beginning of the season, we were seeing so many snowy owls.
Tons of snowy owls.
They were
Yeah.
incredible snowy owl sightings. And then we haven't seen them for maybe a week. I haven't for at least a week.
No. That gyrfalcon's been hanging around, which has been way cool.
We're looking
Yeah.
for those voles.
Yeah.
Yeah, the gyrfalcon. My first season, we had Arctic fox everywhere, and particularly in town at night time, you'd see them behind the lovely smelling restaurants in town. But then the following season, hardly a sighting of an Arctic fox. They're relying on an animal like the lemming, and they fluctuate as a species. Their population fluctuates, so definitely sometimes there's feast or famine for a lot of these species, so that's kind of what determines what we see. I was seeing quite a few Arctic hare leading up to the snow falling, and now we're trying to find a beautiful, pure, snow white Arctic hare that kills up in a bundle against the snow.
It's almost impossible.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
They have little black tips on their ears, so that's a giveaway, but try to find little black tips.
It's hard.
Good luck.
It's hard.
Yeah.
But we do see them. Ptarmigan, grouse-related bird species that lives the winter here, we've been seeing them. So there's some species we definitely see more than others. Arctic fox we do see actually around the lodge a little bit. So that's cool.
And we just had a red fox run by
Oh,
yesterday.
I haven't seen a red fox in weeks, but that's
Yeah.
cool.
That's funny. And I have not seen a single Arctic fox this year, but I've seen 3 red foxes.
No
And
way.
it's the first time that's ever happened to me, so I'll keep an eye out for the Arctic.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
weird.
every day's different.
Yeah.
It's very, very
Totally.
dramatic, and the weather certainly changes what you see.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the windiest conditions, even the bears are hunkering down, and then it's quite often though the Arctic fox or the fox, they're always on the move and always feasting and looking for food because they have the ability to stay so warm and they're just always on the move. So yeah, it's quite different depending on what day it is. Mhm.
So our last question, and I'll let you both answer it, and this kind of varies depending on the type of work you're doing up here. But someone is wondering, do we live up here or do we go home each evening?
That's a good question.
You've got the most interesting, I think, BJ, so.
Well, I'm pretty lucky. I'm totally spoiled. This vehicle we're in right now is Buggy 1, and the front half, the part you guys see here, is the broadcast studio. So this is where we do all the live events, but not too far away, like 6 feet away, 10 feet away is my bunk, just behind the wall there. So we've got a bathroom in here, we have a heater in the back, and there's a bunk bed in there, so 2 bunks. And that's where I sleep every night that I'm out here on the lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, I would spend like 80 days straight out here,
Woo!
just driving the polar bear cam, living. I mean, it was pretty wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but now I get to go home on the weekends. KT Miller comes out sometimes with Elisa on the weekends here. They drive the buggy around and drive the cams, and then I'm kind of the Monday through Friday guy out here. So
You're getting older, BJ. You're getting older.
I know. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And what's your schedule like up here?
My schedule changes depending on what group that I'm leading. Quite often I am bringing a group and it's town based, so we stay in hotels. So after a day on the Tundra Buggy, we'd end up in town, have dinner in a restaurant, then sleep in a hotel room. And I'll do that for 3 nights and then go back to Winnipeg and pick up a new group. I've had about 3 tours that have been lodge based, so that means we are based at the lodge here. And it's great because we're still out here and we can still see bears. When we're in town, we're not on the tundra, not in a buggy, and hopefully not seeing bears. We don't want to see bears in town. So, yeah, I love both tours, but it's neat being out here.
Nice, yeah. And my schedule is kind of tied to BJ's, or just depending on our broadcast. So I'm often out Monday to Friday, sometimes on the weekends, sometimes in town, and then when I'm out here on the lodge, I just kind of sleep wherever they tell me to. So there's some staff quarters, there's Buggy 1, there's a couple different staff quarters. So there's Buggy 8 that has 8 bunk beds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, look at that. Buggy 8 has 8 bunk beds, plus a little pedestal thing up front that people sleep on. And that's kind of a party lounge place sometimes too. There's good times in Buggy 8. And then sometimes we even bunk with the guests.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really great time out here, no matter kind of what's going on or who's sleeping out here. There's always lots of fun people. And the cooks, so there's a cook, and then a kind of cook / lodge mom, Emma, and then another helper out here, Ralph, who does all the maintenance. And they're out here the entire season, basically,
Yep.
from
They're
start
out
to
for the
finish.
long haul.
They don't touch ground, really. Sometimes Ralph has to, briefly, but yeah, they are out here all season,
Yep.
working and serving people and just really being awesome.
They call us that get to go to town ground walkers. You're the ground walkers because they don't walk on ground for 2 months straight.
No. Oh man.
No.
And they're only able to walk from west to east.
Yeah.
Because that's the direction roughly that the
Yeah.
lodge is facing. So
That's why
They have a
sometimes
pretty
they like to
linear
visit
lifestyle,
us.
don't
the
they?
linear
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
They like to visit Buggy 1 because we kind of park perpendicular, so they'll kind of walk just a little bit.
I get to
north,
turn
south.
left. Yay!
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty funny. Yeah, we're sure lucky to have them. And tonight on the lodge, it's going to be a fun night too. We've got a lot going on. We've got some good groups, and we're going to go hang out with them. So, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Hayley. It was so good to have you.
Thanks for inviting me, and what a great idea. This has
Yeah.
been wonderful to reconnect, bringing the belugas back into my memory. They're always there, of course,
Yeah.
but combining the belugas and the polar bears, and yeah, it's really neat to be a part of this again, so thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Thanks
And
for arranging it.
maybe if you two are out at Cape together, we can do another
Yeah,
short
we can
one or
maybe try
something.
another one.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
super cool.
Maybe in a couple
We'll
weeks.
update from Cape Churchill.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
cool.
And
Yeah.
we could do a Tim Tam slam in front of
Oh,
everyone.
gosh,
There you go.
That's
Stay
a-
tuned for the Tim
that's a
Tam
date.
Slam from
Yeah.
Cape Churchill, everybody.
I can't wait.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us during Polar Bear Week. And we will be broadcasting again next week, but we'll also be running the live cams all weekend, so don't go away. And we just really appreciate the community support, and thanks to Explore.org, Parks Canada, Frontiers North, Churchill Northern Study Center, and all our awesome partners. We really couldn't do this sort of stuff without you and without the viewers. So have a great weekend, everybody.
everybody.
Thanks for joining
Thank
us on a
you.
Friday afternoon or evening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.